Well, good morning, everybody. This is Joe Gavalis with the Safe Senior Hour, and we're glad you're back with us. We'll have an interesting discussion today about senior issues, and we're very fortunate to have as our guest Officer Chuck McPhilamy with the Marietta Police Department, who is their public information officer, but he also acts, and we thank the Marietta PD, as our public information officer on the North Georgia Elder Abuse Task Force. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning.
I appreciate you coming on, and I know we only have a little bit amount of time with you, so I just want to, there are just a couple areas that we want to cover with you. I was at a get-together with seniors Sunday night, and we were talking about various issues, and two things came up, so I don't care whichever order you'd like to address them, but one is, we tell them to, if they see something, say something, call somebody, and we tell them to call 911, the police. What do the police do with the information, especially if they're not going to think they're going to arrest somebody? What do they do with it? And then the second issue is they wanted to know examples of adult children who end up living at home with their parents and what kind of abuse that samples of abuse. And I know you had a couple of those in Marietta, and they were kind of horrible. So I don't know which one you want to handle first. I don't hear him. I can't hear him.
To take information and determine, is this something that they should dispatch an officer to, or should they send fire or paramedics? What is the actual call? What does it sound like? The premise of see something, say something is that if I come into your neighborhood as an officer wearing a uniform, I don't know which cars normally park at which residence. I don't know if your neighbor normally leaves their front door open and a screen door closed. I don't know if there's dogs that normally roam the neighborhood or stay within 1 yard, but you do. And that key would be that you know what looks out of place, what looks strange. Please report that information. When you do report that information, your information as the caller is logged with that call taker at 911. So if I called from my home or my cell phone, it would say that Chuck McPhilamy called 911 to report suspicious activity at whatever location I said, and it would ask that officers be dispatched to look into it. One of the questions the call taker at 911 is going to ask me, so Mr. McPhilamy, we understand that you want an officer dispatched. Did you want to meet with the officer or not?
Right.
That's entirely your choice. I'll tell you, as a police officer, I would always encourage you to say yes, because it's going to get you the opportunity to start that dialogue with the neighbor. So that if you had someone who moved into the house 2 or 3 doors down the road from you, and you might not have met them yet, something seems strange, what better time to meet them than when you're showing this outward act of concern, stating that something seems strange and you were concerned for their well-being. It's a good icebreaker to get to meet your neighbors, as well as ask the officer, because the age-old question is, well, I called and the officer came out, but I don't know what happened. I don't have any closure. Well, if you agree to meet with the officer can tell you what they discovered. Yes, there was a problem. No, there wasn't. Yes, there was a problem and we arrested someone. Whatever that situation is, what better way for you to get closure than to introduce yourself to that officer that's responding?
I totally agree with you. We had a situation last night where the individual was concerned about his neighbors, just like you said. They has two neighbors. They're 191, 92, fairly well off, but kind of on the hoarder side of things. You know, they've still got like 5 old cars in in their barn and the garage and stuff. But his concern was he has no relatives, he has no kids, and they're just primed for the taking. And what can be done? And again, is there anything criminal? No, but he said, where do I go? Who do I tell somebody? Where can they get the help? And we happen to have somebody from the Elder Abuse Task Force was also there. And the idea is call me and we can get you to the professionals. And that's what the law enforcement, not every time you get a call, you put somebody in jail, correct?
Absolutely. It's more often that we show up and bridge the gap between two neighbors or two issues. Think of something not subject just to someone of age. You get that noisy neighbor who loves to have the radio on outside while they're doing yard work. Well, at some point, it becomes a noise violation. Well, no one's going to jail over that, but there is a way for you to approach them as a neighbor and say, can you turn it down? And if they do, then great. And if they don't, then at some point it becomes a respect issue. And bringing the police in, we can go over and talk to both groups about what does the actual local ordinance say, because it's unique for every city and every state.
Right. Well, I think what's important for our listeners to know, Marietta is a city outside of Atlanta. I don't know what your population is.
We have a population of roughly 60,000 according to the last census. Sorry. We believe that number has grown upwards into the 70 to 75,000. We're looking at a square mileage area of roughly 25 square miles. We're a fairly small city in northwest suburbs of Atlanta. We are the county seat for a large county, for Cobb County.
Right.
And we are, if you were to go back in history, the vacation destination for people who grew up in Atlanta when Atlanta was being formed. So it's a picturesque area, and you might even say a Norman Rockwell sort of a feel for a town square. But we also have a lot of large industry here. So you have families that moved to this area 60, 70 years ago when Lockheed Martin was first started as an organization here, when Dobbins Air Force Base was started. And so you have people now that are in that senior part of their life that have lived here their whole life and now have adult children that have either moved away or live in the area. It's a pretty good demographic of age. And I think that's a good segue into your second question, if we're doing okay on time.
We've got great time. We're up to you. When you have to go,
okay.
Just let us know. But I do want to make a point about your police department. You are very community oriented. You believe in community policing. So when you talk about it, and fortunate enough, that's the direction of your department, and we obviously brag on that all the time because it really puts the citizens right in the middle of their interaction with the police. Isn't that a good way to say that's what community policing is?
Agreed, yes. We are very fortunate that we have a very progressive thinking chief as well as a senior command staff that talk routinely about procedural justice and what does that phrase really mean and how does that dovetail into community policing. The procedural justice aspect would say that each person needs to have a voice, and at its core that is community policing. You live within the community, you want to feel like the police are approachable, you want to feel like they're going to be there for you in your time of need. You want to feel like you can call them without fearing for any repercussions of, well, what if I call them? A very common thing that we get, especially as people age. The older we get, the more reluctant we are to call 911 because we have this fear that we're being a burden. The reality is that we call police and firefighters responders, and we don't think about that word enough. Most of the time, police are being dispatched to something or responding to something. If the community isn't partnering with us and telling us about something that may be happening now, then more often than not, police across the country are responding to something after a crime took place. And I don't think any of us would intentionally say, let's go ahead and let the crime occur and then just document it afterwards.
Right.
We would all love to think that when we partner together, that the police will work with us, respond accordingly, and help prevent crime by the fact that they are coming out in zone patrolling an area, looking at what we said might be suspicious activity. When the partnership happens with the community like we have experienced, the outcome is inevitably a reduction in crime.
I can't say enough about having seen what you have done, the issues, and especially working with seniors, well, with the whole community. But your officers get to know the area a lot better than somebody who just reacts to it. There's a call, there's an accident, there's a break-in. Yeah, that's what police do. They react to it, as you say, first responders. But if you're in the community policing mode, you're in the community and people are going to be talking to you. And yes, you do respond, but also you're there where people can come up and say, oh, by the way, have you noticed this? I can't say enough about the concept of community policing, and you all take it to the perfect example of what should be done in a community. But I do think that's kind of a significant point that you made, that seniors think it's a burden, and we stress if it's suspicious, call. I'll give you an example, and maybe you have the same type of example. It deals with we had 4 people come up, knock on an elderly woman. She's a widow's door the other day, and she didn't want to be not polite to them, and she didn't know what they were selling. They were trying to get her to buy something, and she wasn't paying attention, but she didn't want to be ugly, and the idea is, if you're suspicious, she wasn't sure who these people were, and they wouldn't tell her directly. So, this is where you call the police and let the police come out and deal with these suspicious people, because you don't want them in your house. You don't want them casing your house. I mean, is that a fair analogy of why you should call the police?
Oh, absolutely. We had a caller last week who reached out ironically to me direct, because she lives in the community, and as you said, we get to know the residents. She happened to know how to reach me through social media and get straight to me. Georgia has become a smaller version of the movie studios that most of us grew up kind of associating the West Coast with. And as those movie studios have gained more traction here, they've also moved into the city of Marietta. They do a lot of filming here. Everything from television commercials to actual movies to TV series. Well, I had a local resident who's older who said, someone came to my door with a clipboard and they said that my house was going to be in the background of a commercial.
Chuck, excuse me, if I can interrupt, if we could finish this, so we'll let people wait and hear the end of this at the end of our break. We just have to take a hard break. With that ends our first segment of the Safe Senior Hour. Thank you.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's DOCS, the number 4, patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, you need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Ronaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
If your health insurance premium is more than your mortgage, Ellen Deal with Ideal Solutions is here to help. Whether you're a small business owner, individual, family, or baby boomer, email maga45cag@gmail.com and I'll respond with 3 easy questions to help you determine if you can get away from Obamacare. As a 20-year veteran of the insurance industry, I'm here to help with all your insurance needs. Email Ellen Deal at maga45cag@gmail.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Well, welcome back to our second segment, and we're very honored to have Chuck McPhilamy, the officer with the Marietta Police Department, Marietta, Georgia. He's their public information officer, and he's also the public information officer for our North Georgia Elder Abuse Task Force. And Chuck, we appreciate you coming on, and you were in the middle of a story here. I didn't mean to cut you off, but we'll let you, if you could finish that. It was kind of interesting here, please.
Absolutely. We were talking about people being reluctant to call 911, especially as they get older, and the importance of not letting a stranger into your home, and that's not being rude, that calling 911 would be the appropriate situation. The example that I was giving was a local resident who had someone knock at her door. They appeared to just be wearing average clothing, blue jeans, a T-shirt, a light jacket, carrying a clipboard. And the person at the door said, "Ma'am, your house is going to be in the backdrop of a television commercial, and I need to get some information from you." Well, how many of us hearing just that, if we were to open up our front door today and someone greeted us with that, your mind starts to race in 5 different directions. What television commercial? Is this real? Why do they need information from me? Am I going to be paid for this? Are they using my property? Did my relative or loved one give them permission to do this? Your mind races to a lot of different places. Fortunately, the woman in this particular scenario said, "You can leave me your business card and I'll be back in touch, but I'm not giving you my name, my phone number, or any piece of information until I verify with the local police that you are who you say you are, and that the police department has approved, the city has approved your filming crew to come in and use this street and partially my property." So she reached out. We verified that it was in fact real, that she just was not kept in the loop from a mistake, and the reality is that it was okay. But imagine how easy it would be to gain access to someone's house using that just as a ruse to get your foot in the door.
Oh, I see it. I see these people saying they're somebody they're not. The example is, we ask people to speak through the door and say, "Are you?" You have to be licensed to solicit, and they'll show them a plastic-covered card. Well, I remember I confronted a person once and said, "Geez, are you licensed?" And they said, "Here." I said, "Well, let me see it." Well, it was a license to solicit in North Carolina. They weren't even a resident here. And I said, "No, well, that won't work. And by the way, the police are on the way just to help you in any way they can of complying." Well, of course, they took off. But the idea was not to let them in the house, and that's what I was glad about this senior who made that statement, that she was concerned. Who are those people, especially when 4 of them appear on her front porch? And, let's put ourselves in the place of the seniors. She's there all alone. She's a widow, and there's 4 people. There's 4 against 1. That's why your only protection, and I think you agree with this, Chuck, is the door. You got it locked, and they're not going to break in. But if you let them in, then you got to get 4 people out of your house.
I can tell you, in our city, soliciting is not allowed without a specific permit, and that permit is almost never given. Meaning, the city controls it very strictly. You have to meet very rigid guidelines before you're allowed to go door to door, because so many of the residents have stated they don't want that. So if I'm a senior and I live in Marietta, Georgia, and someone knocks at my door, unless they're there on behalf of a church or they're there on behalf of some sort of elected official that's
Right.
trying to share information. Those would be the only two people outside of a neighbor that should be knocking on my door. If I open up that first door or look through a window and I don't recognize who the person is, I would, like you, I would encourage them to immediately call 911 and say, I'm concerned for my safety. There's someone at the door. They're knocking. I don't know who they are. Please come have the police talk with them. And then, if it really is someone that, let's just say it was a distant relative that had looked you up, well, after a good laugh of why did you call the police on me, no one's going to be in trouble, and then you can safely open up the door and not worry about being injured.
Right.
You know, another, if I can break in here for a second, another great thing is the electronics today, and the ability to have a camera on them, talk to them, and never have to open your door.
Correct. The idea of so many different devices, the brand names that would be synonymous with Ring, but the reality is there are several different versions of that same doorbell that you could even set up as you age and get to a point of, I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with this. If you have someone that you want as your power of attorney or a guardian, you could have that Ring device set up to go to their phone, if not your own, so that they could interpret that for you and then decide, is this appropriate for you to open the door?
Well, I think that those are good advices, and again, you know, there are many of them. I think Nest has one, and Ring, various. I do want you to go, and I don't mean to keep you much longer, and I know you're trying to, we're trying to get a lot of information from you in a short period of time. But again, that question that came up, they're asking me, some examples of, you know, when our adult children move in, what kind of forms of abuse or do we see? And I think you had some situations where we talked about it, where the elderly were on the top floor and their kids or grandkids took over the bottom, and you had some issues with that. Do you remember anything like that, Chuck?
Sadly, we've had dozens of cases throughout time. There are a few that come to my mind. I don't know if they're the same ones that came to yours. The situation is this. Each one of us, myself, I will get to a place that I am no longer comfortable living at home alone. And about the time that happens for me, I'm probably going to try and become a little bit more secluded, because I don't really want to show my vulnerability, and I really don't want to go into an assisted living if I don't have to. Now you enter the conversation with your family, your children, your extended family, your aunts, your uncles, your nieces, your nephews. What will that look like for me in that scenario? Will I stay in my own home? Will I have the means to have someone come live with me that's just a paid, just say a nurse? Do I need that nursing care for a certain amount of time or 24/7? Oftentimes we see family members will have someone move back in and live full-time with that elderly person. The question becomes, is the family all on the same page with how that should play out? As the senior, you need to decide who will be responsible for your finances as you age. And that can be someone inside the family or outside of the family. It can be an attorney. When you turn that power over to a child and give them access to your checking accounts and savings accounts, who will be there to really look over their shoulder and make sure that they're not using those funds, to finance a new family vacation for themselves or buy their children new cars and new houses, while the rest of your children and grandchildren don't benefit from any of that? Who will be there to make sure that your care is being monitored? We've seen in that scenario, it's fairly typical that the senior has more than one child, and it's usually one child who is asked to be in control of the books. And when that happens, doesn't happen every time, But when we see a case of abuse, it's because that one child has stepped in and started funneling off literally $20, $50, $80,000 to give to their own kids, or to buy themselves a new car, or to buy themselves a new house. There's a fine line between using that money as you want, it is your money as the senior, and then that child that you've entrusted with it, taking that and using it in an abusive fashion. And we would encourage the siblings hearing this that suspect something like that has occurred. You need to reach out to your local law enforcement and report that. You need to make arrangements to meet with a police officer, give them the facts that you know, ask them to take a report and turn it over to a fraud investigation unit or an elder abuse investigation unit, a detective. So the average officer responding on the road may or may not know all of the different details and avenues that could become a factor in this investigation. But they can take that report from you and start getting justice for that senior.
Again, it starts by somebody having to call who has some concerns. I do want to touch this, and we just have a few minutes left for the segment, and I know you have to go, is when the senior, and I know you had some situations, allows their kids or grandkids to stay in there, and they end up become intimidated by the children or afraid of them. I think you had one case that it was just really horrendous. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, there have been several. Yes,
right.
One where her kids end up getting arrested, and then they tell kids they've been in prison with to come move in with mom and quote unquote take care of mom. Now you have total strangers living with a senior, right, who are completely intimidating that senior.
And the senior's afraid to do anything. And then I think there was a couple where the gentleman got so concerned about his people living in downstairs because they were kind of shunned upstairs that they went out and bought a gun to protect themselves.
I think the key here goes back to your original question: see something, say something. And as we age, it is so critical to have a group of peers, of your contemporaries that you can trust, because there will be times as a senior that you're going to be reluctant to want to share information with your children because it shows a sign of weakness. I understand that. I do. I have great compassion for that. But it doesn't negate the need for you to reach out and tell us that something's happened. The last thing we want is to find out that you've been figuratively or literally held hostage inside your own home.
That's so true, and it's such a horrible situation when you think that somebody's in their own home and are afraid to do anything because they've been intimidated by it. And again, your insight is always appreciated. We always appreciate when you come on. And Chuck, I want to personally thank you and thank for spending your time. And we look forward to having you back on again. And again, I think what you just said is if you see something, say something. Call a professional. So with that, we want to thank you, Chuck, and we'll have Chuck on again. And if you have do you have a email that people can email you or website if they have any questions?
They are always welcome to, and Joe, you can share that anytime. It's first initial and last name, so C. McPhilamy at mariettag.gov.
Well, we appreciate it, and we'll let you go, and thank you again, and that concludes our second segment of the Safe Senior Hour.
The disease of addiction is a life-altering challenge, not just for the person suffering its effects, but also for the family and friends who support and love the one caught in its grasp. What should be the course of treatment? Who is the best person to render treatment? And what is the best place to go for the care that is needed? We know that you want answers to these and many more questions. Call 770-696-9862 and speak to a representative of the Atlanta Healing Center. They can tailor a program specifically designed to address the needs of the person suffering with an addiction. or give you guidance as to where that help may be found. Information is the key, and the trained staff at AHC is here to assist. If you wish, you can also get more information on the website located at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
I want to mention the fact that if you like our shows, you can go and become a patron on our website and contribute $5, $10, $15 a month, whatever you want to do to support the shows that you're listening to. And I also want to mention the fact that we have another advertiser coming on shortly called Claims Medic, and it's for these suspicious bills you get from the hospital after you've been in the hospital, and the hidden charges that they may come up with. And Claims Medic, it's just a fantastic business. They go in and fight your battles for you. You don't have to fight them with the hospital, the insurance company, or the physician that was treating you. Or, like I found out, physicians come in and all of a sudden they say, "Hi, I'm Dr. Smith," and you get a bill from him and you still don't know who he is. So, Claims Medic. And you'll enjoy working with Mary Daniel and her staff. They are fantastic folks. And if you need some help with your medical bills, they're the people to call. We'll be back after this.
Get your pen and paper ready. If there's a move in your near future, I'm here to tell you that the folks I used and now recommend is Around Town Movers. Timothy and the guys recently moved me, and I am and was totally satisfied with a sometimes not so fun experience moving. Call Timothy at 770-378-4708 and make it a good move and a good experience. Around Town Movers for that local or cross-country move. Timothy, Around Town Movers, in my opinion, are the best. That's Around Town Movers. Call them.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Well, welcome back to segment 3 of the Safe Senior Hour. And for this last 2 segments, we're going to be addressing some specific frauds and some information concerning them. But I do want to remind you all, our motto is elder abuse doesn't report itself. And our definition of elder abuse, I know you listeners know what it is, but for our new listeners, we talk about physical, which is pretty obvious when you see bruises or activities. We always give the example. We had somebody that physically abused a person with almost 100% dementia, with Alzheimer's, for who knows what reason, took lighted cigarettes and burned the person all over. I mean, that's obviously physical abuse, or slapping somebody or punching them or things like that. The other type is financial abuse, which is by far the most prevalent. And unfortunately, most of financial abuse is taken or committed by loved ones or relatives. And the third is institutional abuse, and that's abuse that takes place in say, assisted living, nursing homes, or personal care homes. And these are where the living conditions are bad, or that there's issues where the patient is not being cared for, is not being helped, or basic issues like that of health and sanitation. I just want to go over a few things real quickly here about the way the different scams, or how the payment method are, and how people are contacted. And the scams we're just kind of talking about, this comes from the Federal Trade Commission's Sentinel network. Sentinel is the computer. It's a computer used by the Federal Trade Commission when you go on their website, where you report any scams or potential scams that have happened to you. And these are just some data from there, but I thought it was kind of interesting that we look at it here that the online, these are 5 scams that they deal with: online shopping, scams. That would be like people who are claiming they're the IRS or claiming they're the U.S. Marshals, claiming they're the local sheriff, and say that they're being that you missed jury duty, you failed to appear in court, you didn't pay your taxes, they're from the water department, you didn't pay your water bill. These are all types of scams, and they contact normally by phone, email, or online. But the interesting deal, another scam is the check scams, and the other is business opportunities, work at home scams. Now these scams, they're all trying to get your money, and the payment method that we see the most here are ways that they need to get your cash, your money, whether it's in savings in a bank, and a box in your room. They need to get that cash, the bad guys, into their hands, the perpetrators. So how do they do that? Well, they do it that they'll do it by a wire transfer, like we used to do. Go to Western Union and wire the money. They can do it by gift reload cards, and these are cards that you can go buy at almost any store, and they're known as, or examples of them are like iTunes cards. It used to be Green Dot cards, that you would make your payment by those. And what all those cards are is you go, and these can be found all over the world, that you go in and you take your $500 and you go to the cashier. They activate a plastic card, looks like a debit card or credit card, and on that is you have $500 now in that card that can be used up to $500. Well, the bad guys and the perpetrators want you to then buy whatever the amount of cards you have to buy, and then they'll call you and say, okay, scratch off the number on the back, and there's a code number. Well, that code number, when the perpetrators, put it in their computers, because they're online, and they put in the number that you just gave them from the card, that $500 is just drained right away. They take it out and they clean it, and that's why there's no cash other than what you paid to get the card. Now these people just have money in their account. So we just need to be aware of situations like this, because the payment method will tell you whether it's for real. For example, the United States government, state governments, city governments, county governments, to my knowledge and to law enforcement that I work with, do not take payments in iTunes cards, legitimate payments in iTunes cards, Green Dot cards, or any of these other cards. They usually want a check or cash. So somebody says, well, you can pay me because you failed to go to jury duty and just get an iTunes card, and that $500 will pay your fee. That's bogus. It doesn't happen. So these are some telltale signs that you need to look at to say, when somebody tells you, if you get this far in a conversation, which we obviously don't think you should shut it off. But I do understand. I'm living alone. I'm out in a rural area, and somebody calls and said they're from the sheriff's department, and you failed to come to jury duty, and we're going to come out and arrest you, but you can pay a fine up front, and what your choice? You don't want to be arrested. You're not sure. You don't remember ever seeing a jury summons, but you don't want to take a chance. And so, you'll go and say, okay, well, how much is the fine? Well, it's $250, it's $500, $750, whatever it is. But when they tell you, rather than say, come to the courthouse and pay it, they say, go get a iTunes card, go get a Green Dot card, and then you can meet me, is what the scam goes. And then, of course, they call and say, I'm tied up on a matter. give me the number on the back of the card. Well, you've just been scammed and you just lost your $500. Now, remember, this is the same thing that happens all the time when concerning utilities. We've had cases where people pose as people calling from the electric company, the rural electric company, the co-ops, or from the water department saying, I'm on my way to shut off your water and it'll be shut off till tomorrow. And you'll say, well, what can I do? I know I paid my bill. Well, our records show, they say our records show that you didn't. And you'll say, well, but you have to get it straightened out downtown at the county seat or wherever the water company is. They say, or I'll be in your neighborhood. I'll check back with you. Maybe I can accept a payment of a fine, and then you got to pay your bill on time next time. So we need like $500, and we only take it in, again, iTunes cards, Green Dot cards, almost all of them. And you can go into a drugstore or a dollar store or grocery stores, and you'll see these cards are on racks, and there's hundreds of them. But again, the premise is you pay cash up front there. They activate the card. They give you the card, and on the back of the card is a number. And that's the number which gives the perpetrators access to the money the hard-earned money you just paid to get that card. And again, that if it just sounds too good to be true. That's all you got to do, rather than appear at the water department or your electric department. So I think that's a pretty significant telltale sign as we talk about these frauds, that they happen, but the method of payment is significant. They usually on scams, for example, like sweepstakes scams, they announce you won. Well, first of all, find out or try to remember, did you ever even play? If you didn't play a lottery, you didn't play a sweepstakes, you can't win it. But if you played and they said you won, and then they make a statement like, oh, you have upfront fees to pay before we can get your prizes, should be red lights going on, blinking all the time. Because if you won, they can take it out of the money that you won, or they can take it out in terms of the distribution when it comes to distributing the prizes and money. I'll give you an example. We have a matter in North Georgia, and we talked about it before, is on the sweepstakes scam. And the one that everybody sees on TV, I was just watching it. And somebody called up and said you had won the Publishers Clearinghouse scam. This is a woman up here in North Georgia. And she was so sure she won. The people are professionals on the phone who said they won. They said, we're coming to your house. We're going to be paying, we're going to be giving you a check, and you're going to be on television. And all you got to do, though, is pay an upfront fee. Well, in this case, she paid over $40,000 in upfront fees because she had won all these goods, but never really collected one prize. But she did dish out $40,000. They convinced her that it was a scam, even though she wanted to believe that she won. Well, these people came back at her and told her not only did she really win the Publishers Clearinghouse, she also won the car that goes with it. It was a German, I think it was a Mercedes or some German. So she paid $20,000 more, and she doesn't have a car and didn't win. So remember, if it's too good to be true, it probably isn't true. So with that, that'll end our third segment. We'll come back and we're going to talk about computer scams.
You can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan, and every family will save thousands of dollars a year. I'm Ellen Deal, and if you've been hurt by the Affordable Care Act, you can email MAGA45CAG@gmail.com to see if we can help. Small business owners, individuals, families, and baby boomers, email MAGA45CAG@gmail.com for 3 easy questions to determine if you can get away from Obamacare. I'm a 20-year veteran of the insurance industry and here to help you for all your insurance needs.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Want to remind everybody again that you can become part of America's Web Radio's family just by going to our webpage and signing up to be a patron. Also, in signing up, we'd like to hear from you about what you do, about your business, your job, what you did, and particularly if you're a veteran. We do a great veteran show every Thursday at 10 o'clock, and we've had General Dix on, we've had Donna Rowe on, all Vietnam veterans, and we also want to remind everybody that coming to Newtown Park in Johns Creek is the healing wall, and that's a replica. It's the one that's been all over the country, taking a tour all over the country for many years, and it's a 50% replica of the Veterans Wall in Washington, D.C., Vietnam Veterans Wall. With all the names, it looks exactly like it is. It is exactly like it, with the exception it's only 50% of the size, and they'll be having the dedication ceremony coming up right after the first of the year. And we want to invite everybody. We'll be keeping you in touch. We'll also be introducing you very shortly to the newest inductees into the Georgia Military Hall of Fame. And everybody that we've had on from the Hall of Fame has been just the best guests you could imagine. They're wonderful people, veterans you can't beat. Whether they're young, old, it doesn't matter. And if you're looking for a great employee, you can't beat going to the veterans. So we've got a lot of things going on here at America's Web Radio. As we've mentioned, we're the largest producing podcast radio station in the country. We have great hosts, great sponsors, and want to invite you to become a part of America's Web Radio. By hearing from you, you'll also hear from us. You'll be the first to know as we get new shows, and we've got several new shows that are coming up that are going to just knock your socks off. If they're like this show, which has been copied, sort of speak, at least the idea has been taken and run with by Fox News and also by the Journal-Constitution. And imitation, I guess, is the biggest form of flattery, and we're flattered that we start something and other people pick it up and run with it as well, because we advocate for a number of different things. And the more publicity they get, like senior abuse, elderly abuse, the more recognition, the more people that are talking about it, the sooner we'll put it to bed. So with that being said, we'll be back in just a couple of minutes and start the last segment of the Safe Senior Hour.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Well, welcome back to our final segment of the Safe Senior Hour. I couldn't agree more with David that, look at your veterans. If you all need people out there, your vets are great people to deal with, and they make great speakers. They have a great story to tell. But for our last segment, we're going to deal with computer scams. When I say computer scams, these are the scams that we've all seen or we've heard about, where you're looking at your computer and all of a sudden a big red sign comes up and it says a virus, or it says, warning, your computer may be infected. System detected 2 potential malware viruses. Call this number. Clean it now. Well, that's the start of a computer scam here. And just to go over just some highlights of it, I can't thank enough Steve Baker of the Baker Fraud Report in his latest one on 10/31/19. He published links to the Better Business Bureau studies about various issues. I think we talked about the romance fraud last time, money mules. Well, this is tech support fraud, and we'll give him and the Better Business Bureau and the Federal Trade Commission just our hats off, a thanks, and they all do a great job. So please, report scams, not only at Federal Trade Commission, but to the Better Business Bureau. But I think when we talk about the internet, computer scams, that's what we're talking about when people come on and are being victimized by networks of thieves posing as skilled computer technicians who operate from the shadows using sophisticated advertising and carefully crafted sales techniques to scare customers into buying phony fixes for their home and business computers. And as I speak to, as you know, I'm a retired federal agent, and I'm the law enforcement coordinator for the North Georgia Elder Abuse Task Force. We've spoken to over 3,000 seniors, and almost every time we speak to a group, somebody or many people in the group have all been hit by this scam. These are pop-up warnings that appear on the screen, or an unsolicited phone call from a technician claiming to have detected problems with your computer. I think the professionals say it best when they say, although there are tens of thousands of complaints, this tech support scam may be seriously underreported because many victims do not even know that they have been defrauded. Others learn only later there was nothing wrong with their computer and they were duped. That's so true. How many people say, I don't know anything about this, but if there's a problem, I'm going to fix it. I want my computer. I want to get on Facebook. I want to talk to my friends. So we all got to be leery of this. In 2016, a global survey, Microsoft, and we all know what Microsoft is, how big it is, found that 2 out of 3 people experienced a tech support scam in the previous year. That's pretty significant. 2 out of 3 people. And, they talk about it and they say, if you have something with your computer, take it to somebody. Don't do it over online. Well, when we look at this, and there's the study by the Better Business Bureau, and with data from the Federal Trade Commission, is very informative. And again, you can look at it at the Baker Fraud Report at steve@bakerfraudreport.com. And you go online, you can read his fraud reports about frauds all over the world that affect not only just seniors, but everybody else. But in this Better Business Report, the scope of the problem, statistics gathered from a variety of reporting sites, are staggering. Microsoft, whose corporate name is dropped regularly by the thieves hoping to gain the trust of skeptical computers, reports receiving 12,000 complaints worldwide every month of attempted internet scams. So something we got to remember. They estimated in that there is over $21 million of loss in just these scams. Kind of unbelievable, isn't it? Outside the United States, the United Kingdom recently reported more than 34,000 complaints of tech support scams in the past year, making what that country refers to as computer fixing fraud the second most common source of consumer complaints in the United Kingdom. An interesting fact from the Federal Trade Commission, A Federal Trade Commission study indicates that less than 10% of consumers victimized by fraud actually complain to law enforcement or Better Business Bureau. So we don't really know the total scope of it. We just know a lot of these scammers are making a lot of big money and getting rich. I think to help illustrate what happens, and I think if you listen, this is a story from a woman in the suburbs of St. Louis, and this is how she tells her story, how she got scammed. That she was viewing an online cosmetic product on her 3-month-old computer when a warning suddenly appeared on a screen, joined by an automated message over her speakers alerting her to a dangerous situation with her device. The pop-up warning instructed her to call a number on the screen to address the issue. The person who answered told the victim he worked for a subsidiary of Microsoft. He told her that her computer had been infected by a virus. The technician, who said he represented a business called Chrome Shield, took remote control of her computer and charged $179 to her debit card to fix the problem. Remember, a debit card, the money comes right out. A credit card, you at least have a chance to appeal it. Suspecting she had been victimized, she took her machine to a Best Buy store where she was told there was nothing wrong with the computer and she had been scammed. She said the story didn't end there. A year later, a representative claiming to be from the same company called her, and this time saying it was refunding her initial payment, but instead of returning her original $179, the company said it had inadvertently deposited $2,000 into her checking account. They asked her to buy $1,821 in iTunes gift cards to return the overpayment. Thomas realized there was another scam and immediately declined. She said she felt violated by this incident. Her advice: call the Better Business Bureau. Make sure to keep any supporting documents for the scam. Well, more importantly, that is call the police, call the sheriff's office. You need to find it. That just shows you how this happened. Here's somebody that tells the story here. Nearly half of these computer scams begin with a full screen alert message appearing on a user's computer. Thus, victims often believe their computer has crashed, potentially losing all the data. I do want to end it. We're about to end our segment here, but there are some quick guidelines of what you should do, and I just want to touch base with consumer tips, and then we'll end it. Do not purchase any software or services from an unsolicited call, email, bogus website, or online ad. Never give control of your computer to a third party unless you can confirm that is a legitimate representative of a computer support team. And do not be fooled by phony text. Do not rely solely on a monthly statement from a bank card. Check constantly, and do not contact a fraudulent company. Let's not try to get scammed. And with that, we're just making you aware of another scam. So we're going to end our sessions here on the Safe Senior Hour. Remember, elder abuse doesn't report itself, and you all be safe out there.
45 years of experience is behind the most trusted name in auto transportation. Passport Transport, the first